Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Blairstown Township Committee Budget Workshop Meeting for Saturday, March 5th, 2022. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's have an opening roll call.
Mr. McAtora?
Here.
Mr. Orcott?
Here.
Mrs. Van Valkenburg? Here. Mrs. Waldron's going to be absent. Mayor Moorhead?
Here. Please rise for the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, setting forth the time, date, place, and purpose of this public meeting through a legal notice published in the New Jersey Herald and the Star Ledger. So we are here to talk budget today. Who would like to start? I know we've gone over this in preliminary meetings, and it's another tight one.
Mayor, maybe just discuss the format of the meeting for the members of the public.
Well, the format I have here is budget discussion.
That's correct.
right there.
Well, Dave had asked to be heard, but on behalf of the BEC, but maybe we're not going to do that at this time. But he discussed his needs out in the forum with Charlie and myself. So, you know, we'll take, if you have to do the other meeting, we'll take that into consideration during the course of this meeting.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Well, I know that you discussed it with two members of the committee, but there's 5 on here, so I'd like to hear what else he has to say.
Okay, well, then I guess we'll open this up to the public. So, Dave, what have you got for us? Absolutely, yeah.
I'll be quick because I know this is going to be a long meeting for you guys. So I'm Dave Paulson, 3 Water Street. I'm the president of the BEC. What I had discussed was part of what I wanted to just ask, and I know this is a difficult process. Anytime you're talking about raising taxes, it's never going to be popular, specifically around here. So one of the things I did want to ask, though, is part of what we're trying to do as an organization is create opportunities in the town that start to build the character of the town, or an identity for the town, which is based in community events, fun events, you know, I'll say the hallmark identity of the town. We have Rob, we've talked about this a number of times over the years. When we've been running the events, the BEC runs on a very tight budget. We only have somewhere about the area of $20,000 to $25,000 a year that we're running on. We hired a part-time administrator this year to try to help us organize these things, because obviously we're working just like you guys are and hours are short. So when we're running an event like that and you're paying $1,000 for police, $900 for toilets, those types of things, it puts a dent. It's a constant trickle down at that point. So the only request I was going to make, and again, I understand the difficulty of what you're dealing with here, that money's short, so this might seem like a very trivial request, but if there's a way to start, even if it's a very small amount, lumping some money aside in the budget for those types of events, for us to start building on the identity and the character the way that we've talked about. And obviously it would come as a request to you guys for those types of things. It's the nuts and bolts pieces that can be pretty expensive, that for volunteer organizations are tough. So that was it. Again, I have no expectation that you're going to be able to do it. I know you're dealing with something difficult, but if we can keep that thinking in mind, and if there's a hole there where we can, I think you're talking 10 grand. You start small. If we get bigger and things start going in the direction we want, and there's more money someday laying around, you do what you can. So,
Dave, everything that the BEC does comes back to our town. Am I correct? Even grants for kids that attend the high school, etc.
Yeah. So we have $2,000 a year that we put towards 2 students for. Yeah, everything is all either donated, or it's in kind. It's from us putting our time in and our own money in to do things. So there's, we're not really, no one's profiting off of this other than having a good time and making friends. So, all right. So again, any questions, if anyone has them for me, feel free, and I appreciate it. So, sorry you're gonna take 5 hours on your Saturday to do this, but I appreciate what you do.
Thanks, Dave.
Won't take that long.
All right. John, Christine, which one of you would like to present us with the good news?
Oh, that's your, no. Good morning, everybody. Christina provided me with some information on your budget this year, and we put together our sheets. That's the one dated March 2nd of 2022 up in the upper right-hand corner. We have, this is the year that we've been talking about for quite some time now, right? For the longest time, Blairstown has been able to not have a municipal tax rate. And over the past couple of years, we instituted a tax rate because there really was no surplus left to keep using budgets. There were capital needs that needed to be done. Surplus was dwindling. You were receiving the same amount in energy receipts tax for the last, 10 years or so. That hasn't increased. So you were fighting an uphill battle. And last year, the governing body decided to hold off one more year before going through the 10-cent limit. And the 10-cent limit is important because right now you have to be compliant with an expenditure cap. Once you go over 10 cents, now you have to be compliant with both the expenditure cap and the levy cap. The majority of municipalities in New Jersey are subject to both of these taxes, these levy caps. You were not, because your tax rate was always under 10 cents. This year, we're going to blow through that. And it was our advice to you, if you want to, use us and put us out in front. If you go over the 10 cents, go over the 10 cents, because you only get one bite at that apple, okay? Once you're subject to that tax levy cap, you're only going to be able to move in small increments. Last year, I had another town within Warren County who went through the tax rate, through the 10 cents, and they went up to 15 cents. All right, I don't think that was necessarily enough because this year they're limited to what they can increase if they have to increase. The proposed budget as it sits today for Blairstown is an increase of 15 cents. So you'd be going from 9.9 cents to approximately 25.1 cents, an increase of 15.2 cents as the budget sits. Now, why is it going up so much? On Tuesday, we are going to be selling bonds. Okay, that's going to take all of your temporary debt that you've had over the past few years in the form of bands and roll them into one serial bond. That'll be payable over 10 years. We'll get the payment schedule on Tuesday, know the number that we need to come up with for interest by Wednesday. You're doing that because you're addressing your capital needs. In a pretty large ordinance last year that's in there for improvements to roads. I believe there was improvements in acquisitions. There was a $2.3 million bond anticipation note that went out. That's one of them that's being rolled into it. So all you'll have no other temporary debt after this issue is done on Wednesday. Come next year, 2023, that's when you start paying off principal and 2 interest payments on an annual basis. So this year, to start preparing for that, you'll see that the capital section of your budget has a lot more dollars in it because we're starting to build capital, and while we're building capital, we're paying debt, right? So the way I look at it is if you had $1 million in total between capital and debt in your budget this year, now next year you have a debt payment. So rather than being an 80-20 split, next year, the debt payment goes up to $500,000. Then the capital comes down to $500,000. So you still maintain that capital and debt in your budget. It's not fluctuating the tax rate, and then inside the cap will take care of itself as we go through that budget process. But the idea is it's going to go up this year, and we're going to try to hold it at least. I think for the foreseeable future, you can hold it at that level if you intend to do so. That's each year the governing body changes a little bit, differences of opinions. But this is where we are today. We've been talking about this for a long time, and unfortunately, eventually it happens, and here we are.
John, we had Mayor, through you. John, we had the discussion about when we raised this tax rate to 25 cents or so, that we would be able to maintain that for approximately 5 years.
I believe
At
you could.
flat at 5 years with no increases in the next 5 years to the municipal tax. You're pretty confident, you've been confident right along that we'll be able to do that based on the way the bonds mature, the bond payments, all the way you've got this structured.
Yes, unless there's something that hits us out of the blue, there's no reason why we couldn't work with the budget and keep it at that 25 cents going forward. Again, you don't know what's around the corner. You know, something breaks down, whatever the
It would have to be catastrophic, though.
Yes. But we would be able to, at that point, pull different levers and say, okay, how do we get down to, what can we cut? And do we need all the capital money? You know, could we back off of that a little bit? Whatever we can do to get you back down to that 25 cents and keep that flat for the next several years. Unfortunately, you can't hold future committees to that, but if that's your thinking, that's a good plan.
Well, that's a selling feature for me, that,
Okay.
you know, we raise it and we'll be able to at least hold the line for 5 years. That would be a very good target, and I'd want to get behind that part of it anyway.
Joanne?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Sure.
Number one, we do not know what our bond payments will be. I know we had an estimate based on the principal amount and for the interest and the principal for the, which was anticipated for this year, originally last year, which was about $700,000. I'm going to assume that that will be close to what we would have to pay next year, principal and interest. I don't know, interest rates are going up. I'm assuming that's going to affect the bond. You know, the rates that we would be able to get on bonding. Is that a realistic number? What estimate is there based on the discussion this morning?
Over the past year, a year ago this time, we sold a bond in Harmony, and we got 1.123%. We just sold one up in Wallkill Valley. It was up to 2.25%. So the serial bond interest rates are going up. Now, they're a lagging rate, which means your corporate bonds are going up a lot faster. Even your T-bonds, your government bonds, they're going up faster. The municipal rate's the last one that follow, you know, that's the tail of the increase. So with that said, tomorrow I'd be happy with anything under 2.5%. I'd be thrilled. If you got anywhere between 2.5% and 2.75% over the next 10 years, because we know interest rates are not staying low. So, and this takes the guess factor out of budgeting for that in future years. Because if you continue to roll over the bands, they're 1 year, and then you're subject to whatever next year's rate is. So it could go up big, you know.
And at some point, you have to convert them anyway, or pay them.
Or pay them off.
Correct.
You have 10 years to pay them off.
Correct.
So this was a nice tool in which we can get 10 years, we pay it off in 10 years. Projected at, and we come in with the ultra conservative estimate, because back when we were doing this, it was 3.5% is what we said. So in the general fund bond, we're looking at 2023 of about $564,000 at 3.5%. And that $564,000 doesn't fluctuate more than $1,000 on an annual basis. We tried to get that number, boom, so that you know if you put $554,000 into debt service next year, you're going to pay between $563 and $565 over the next 10 years, principal and interest combined. So we tried to take that out of it and have a nice level debt service payment for the remainder of the life, right? Because we don't want to see taxes spike up and down. You know, you can have a great year 1 year and then you're paying more the next. Takes that out. So at 3.5%, that's what it puts in. If it comes in at 2.5%, we're looking at a different scenario. You know, we're looking at substantially less. So it's just a matter of where things land on Tuesday.
And the bond, the way it works with the interest on the bonds, it's sort of like a mortgage, where you're paying more interest up front, and then principal declines as the years go on, correct?
You're paying,
What I've
you're
seen
going
in
to
the
pay
past.
one principal payment annually.
Right.
And 2 interest payments.
Right.
6 months apart. So there'll be one day where you pay principal and interest on the same day, and then 6 months later pay the interest portion only. And it's split into the, you know, they do the annual rate and they divide it in half and you pay half of it. So there will be a payment this year for interest because you're going out in March. So if the March bonds sell, you know, April 1st is if that's the date, and 6 months from October 1st is your first interest payment. That we have to put into the budget. That's one thing that's not in the budget. But I think there's some area where we can move things around and address that this year, because you are going to need an interest payment. But we don't know what it is yet, so I can't put it in there until I know.
But that washes out all the bond anticipation notes that we had
Yes, it does.
previously.
Yep. So we'll be, the only other one that we have in there, and the other thing that you're doing with this, is that you have a bond, a serial bond that's out there that I believe is somewhere between 4 and 4.5%. We're at a point now where we can take it and go, because it's been callable, so now we can go and we can get it refunded and come in at a lower interest rate.
Right.
Now with that, we saw a lower rate in Blairstown. Belvedere. I knew I was going to do that today. All right, so they're at 2.1% for their refunding bond, which just happened a month ago or so, or less than a month ago. So you're going to cut the interest in half over the life of that issue, and that's going to need to be reflected in here as well, but it's a good thing because the interest is going to come down this year. So are you being as prudent as possible? I believe you are. I mean, you're addressing the capital needs of the town, and you're taking old debt and refunding it so you can have some interest savings and take advantage of the last little bit of low interest rates that I think you're going to see for a long time. Along with that, you're putting money into capital, which is always an issue. We always know this. This is always the budget buster, right? Capital at the end, how are we going to pay for it? What are we going to do? Well, now you have money in the budget this year that's going to get you on the path to pay for items that are coming up a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. You're getting yourself on that path. And again, if you can do all of that, I know it's a significant increase this year, but if you can do all of that and still maintain that same tax rate year after year, I think you're putting yourself in the best position.
Now, the money that we get in for COVID, the supposed $563,000 or $565,000, where is that sitting at?
Right now, that is sitting in the federal and state grant funds as unappropriated. When we met, when we had our sub-budget committee meeting, John had mentioned that their firm is starting to recommend that we put it through capital. So we would do a fully funded capital ordinance on an item per item basis. So if hypothetically we're going to do item A, we would take 2 readings, put it into the capital, and be fully funded there.
So that would go specifically towards something specific, let's put it that way, not just towards debt payment or...
It cannot.
Right, it has to be COVID related.
Well, right now we have, there's a revenue loss section and the COVID related section. For 2021, we received $62,000 and change was considered revenue loss.
Right.
Originally, the state, that was going to be a boost to your fund balance. They later came back and changed it and said that they would like you to purchase something with it. So that could be anything. There's no restrictions on that money. The balance of the $235,000 and change, that has to fit the COVID-related items per the grant, and that would be for water, infrastructure, COVID, telecommunications, etc. So we have $62,000 that we don't have any limitations on, and then we have $235,000 that we still have to abide by COVID-related items.
Okay, is there anything in this budget related to that?
No. It's not budgeted, that's why it's in
It's totally separate from the budget. You can
Correct.
go out for bid or whatever on a project and use that money towards that
Yeah, well, yes. you'd have to
without
do
going through
ordinance.
your budget?
Okay, it's absolutely not
Outside
budgeted.
budget.
Like the repairs to the old well.
Okay,
Yes, it's completely has nothing to do with the budget.
okay.
And of course, anything you use for the water department, which probably what the primary use will be for that money, is in the water. It's the water side of the business anyway.
We would put it through water capital.
Right.
And, the stipulation is that it has to be COVID related. But the loophole to that, and I'll say it in public, I don't care. The loophole to that is, well, we were going to do the project in 2020, and then COVID hit, and we didn't want to raise taxes to do the project. So it's COVID related because COVID crushed the project that we were going to do. Because I want to see you utilize this money rather than it go back and get recycled and go to different counties where they're going to put it in their pockets and they're going to walk away with it. So we're looking for ways to make sure that all of the projects that you want to do are COVID-related somehow.
And we need to encumber that money by when? End of '24?
2020.
End of 2024, it has to be fully, it has to be encumbered by the end of 2024, expended with canceled checks available, I believe by, I don't know if it's 2025 or 2026.
Yeah.
Yes.
We will use some of that when we get around to doing the financing for the digital sign, right? That will be an example of, will it? That will be an example, well, she's looking at me funny, like it's outside the budget. That sign would be outside the budget. Capital ordinance using
The code.
the 62,000 or maybe not the 62,000.
Actually, the digital sign can be used out of the 235,000 because it is public service, it's an announcement.
Communication,
right?
yeah.
So
Right.
we do have, other municipalities have used that from the actual COVID portion.
So let's back up a second. We had 62 and 235. What does that give us? That gives us 300.
297,000. Now, that was only 2021. We are going to be getting the same amount in 2022, supposedly.
Oh, all right.
So right now, we have $297,000 total in COVID money.
Okay.
We spent about 10 or 12, how much was the 12? We spent 12,000 on the recorder machine in January here. So we have about $285,000 remaining.
So go back to the 62,000. They did not want us to apply that to what we had used it for before. They want us to apply it to...
They did not want us to apply to fund balance or our surplus to go up. They want you to go out, and they're now telling you there's no limitations on what you could purchase.
Okay.
You could purchase a vehicle with it, for example. There's not, that 62,000 is revenue loss, and they are, correct me if I'm wrong, they're seeing it as, if you had this revenue, you could have gone out and purchased a vehicle. But because you had revenue loss, you could not fund it. So they are allowing you to go out and purchase it without any strings attached.
And while we're on the subject, the idea of revenue loss, you didn't lose $62,000. You just didn't grow as quickly as they thought you should have grown. So all of your revenues were still coming in. You were doing well. You didn't have like an off year because of COVID. They actually took this back, and the calculation went back to 2018. What does that have to do with?
This was a loophole for your bigger cities to get able to get the money and put it
Right.
in.
This is a
But we
spending
did
plan.
have additional expenses due to COVID.
But you also
We
had
absolutely
CARES
did.
money come in to help fund those expenses as well, separate from this.
Correct. We had, I want to say it was $42,000 or $48,000. We didn't qualify for the CARES. We got the LGEF grant.
Yes.
That was at the end of 2020, and that paid for all the PPE, a lot of the a lot of the laptops and systems, and it paid for the recording. The police department was able to get a recording for the interviewing system.
But overtime for police and public works, because some were out for COVID and we had to cover, that did not get
We
applied
received
towards
about
that.
$10,000 or $12,000 for police overtime, but we had to have a cutoff date, correct. It was only the initial response from March to November of 2020 where the police overtime for COVID-related overtime was refunded.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
anything after November of 2020 was not recovered.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions, Mayor. I don't know how you want to proceed, so,
No, fire away.
okay. Ready? Okay. In doing some calculations based on the information that I received, I want a verification. What is the percentage of the salary increases?
In the budget I put 2%.
Okay.
And there is, in your packets, the committee received the list of, there was one sheet for the police officers, and then there was a list for,
That's what we got today?
yes.
Okay.
And it shows the 2021 salaries, a 2% increase in the
Okay. Based on the last 2 years, and this is a big discussion that I'd like to have today, and Charlie, it's important that you rein in on this. Police overtime.
Correct.
Again, this year, we had about 98 that we are doing a payment out on, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
98,000. This year, the vacation payout at the beginning of this year was $16,450. That was in January. That was unused holiday, vacation, whatever their contract allowed them to pay out of unused time past the maximum
I
payout.
was looking at the emergency appropriation again,
It
so
was
I'm assuming
95,000.
that emergency appropriation is similar to what it was the previous year.
Correct.
Okay, so based on all of this, the I don't feel there's enough in the budget for overtime,
I'm sorry?
for police overtime.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Based on what's in the budget, I don't feel that we've put in enough for police overtime.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and this is what I'd like to discuss today. We received a letter recently that the assistant prosecutor for the courts is leaving. And his reasons for leaving is the amount of work. And he also brought up the fact that our police do not need help. They absolutely need help. Number one, the concern that I have is their safety because of all the overtime and covering that they have to do, whether they go for training or whether they go for education. There's always a lot of overtime to cover, and there's not enough that we have on our staff to cover. And to be very honest with you, when somebody keeps working the hours and the hours and the hours that they're working, it's a big concern. And I think, Mr. McAtora, you could probably add something to that. I would like to see us bring another officer on.
Well, I've had discussions with the chief about, personnel. We have one individual now that we're trying to bring on as a full-time. The problem is there's not a very big pool to pick from. We can't get officers, even if we said we could hire one today. So I don't know why that's allowed.
We're just on the verge of feedback. Could you just turn the volume down a little bit? We're just getting that. The main volume on the amplifier. Just a touch. I don't think it'll affect the camera or anything.
No, that's a live feed.
How about that?
1, 2, yeah, that's better. Yeah, we were just hovering over feedback, sorry.
And then the other thing with the $90,000 in overtime, COVID obviously put a serious strain in overtime. So hopefully it's not going to be as high this year. At least we're not anticipating.
It's been this way for years. And, this is the second year that we're doing an emergency appropriation, I believe, or the third year that we're doing an emergency appropriation to cover for overtime and everything else. We are short-staffed on there. And you have a prosecutor, an assistant prosecutor, who even brought that up, how our police department is short-staffed.
I think you're giving that letter from Frankfort Township a little bit too much weight.
No,
Yeah,
I'm not.
they haven't even caught up.
Different issue.
They haven't even caught up on court violations from last year yet. So for him to use that and our caseload as an excuse to leave was
Completely different issue.
yeah.
Well,
He was in no, and I'm sure he's probably been professionally chastised for that outburst anyway, but.
Yeah.
If I could just add something to this to keep in mind as you go through, you are right at your expenditure cap.
I'm waiting for that one to come up, correct.
The only way you're going to put something into the budget is by reducing another line item in the budget at this point. Other than that, you would have to do a petition to the local finance board in Trenton to allow you to go over that cap.
Are we at 3.5? Did we include 3.5?
That's with the COLA ordinance increase, right? You're going to have additional surplus that will offset if you were to go through that 3.5%, and it were allowable by the local finance board in order to do that. So you're going to need to generate surplus first before we can have this in the budget. That's why if we decide to go down to Trenton and do the local finance notice, right, or local finance board, and ask them for a waiver from this cap, and say, let's go up another $200,000, you're going to need an additional $200,000 in surplus in order to be able to do that first. So.
And what about the
right
COPS
now-
grant?
COPS grant, is that the one where they fund it for like 2 years and they run their own? Yeah, 3 years. I don't know what the availability is and who would write that, so.
We applied for it 3 to 4 years ago. It is very difficult to get out. We did apply when we had Bruno Associates. We hired the grant writer. We had $36,000 grant writer. He failed. He was not able to get
And that's
the grant.
before we had any tax or anything in any town.
It's before the tax, but Sussex, Warren, Hunter County usually is not, it's a federal grant. We don't usually qualify. I can't answer that question when we get it, but the COPS grant does not seem to favor New Jersey municipalities. You're competing, Charlie, if you can chime in too, because I think are you familiar with the COPS grant at all? There's usually, the last time when we applied 3 to 4 years ago, there was a lot of homeland security issues. There was, Alaska was very eligible for it. There's criteria that small town police departments usually do not qualify. We can apply for it, but the township would have to hire a grant writer too. I am not, it's out of my realm, it's not in the chief's playbook. We would need pretty much a grant writer.
When it was given to us in the past, and I don't mean the last time it was applied for, but in the past, we did receive it back in the early 2000s, I believe. We didn't have a grant writer back then either.
I don't remember it here, but I remember it in Washington
Yeah.
Township, so they were one of my towns that I had at the time. And that's the last time I saw it, and I thought it was a little more lax back in the day. And I haven't seen it, that's why I asked. I had 2 or 3 years, because I couldn't remember that far back. But yeah, it's not easy to get anymore. And being in Warren, Western, New Jersey, Northwestern New Jersey specifically, it's a lot harder to get some of these grants.
Yeah, I understand that, but I also understand that, things are based on the needs of a town. And when you're seeing a town going up 16 cents for a tax rate in 1 year because of certain things, and we have a police department, I would think it would be a little bit more in our favor now than it had been when we did not have a municipal tax.
I could the argument might be that even though you're going up to 16 cents, you're still one of the lowest tax towns in the county. And I got to believe in the state of New Jersey with a police force and a local tax, you're going to be at $741 for the local rate for the average local taxpayer.
Municipal-wise, we
Yes.
may be, but not overall tax rate.
It's still low.
No, we're
Yeah.
not. We're in the upper portion in Warren County for total tax.
Well,
Total
Including the
tax.
school taxes.
Including
if
a
this
total
last
tax.
year you were at 7,500. I'm in Knowlton, I pay over 10.
I saw that, but there
So-
was a rate that came out recently and I don't think I have it with me, maybe I do.
I do
where
enough
we
Warren
stood.
County towns where I can peek at that for you, but I still think that you're very on the low side.
No,
Yeah.
not in my opinion, okay,
Okay.
not from what I've seen.
Okay.
But that's something else. But Charlie, you don't feel that we have a need for another officer based on what the chief had brought out and based on what's going on in the police department and the issues that have come up?
Every police department's going to tell you they have a need for another officer. Again, right now, we have the one officer that is still being trained. So I would say for this year, no.
Remember, we brought an officer on late into 2021. He's being trained. He'll be hitting the road unencumbered, I guess, by himself this spring. It's pretty soon, next couple of months, actually. So that changes the equation a bit. And the chief did say, when we brought that person on back in November, that they would not anticipate needing anyone else in the near future. That was part of our agreement, part of our conversation with the chief.
And we've also had the conversation that adding officers will not negate overtime.
No, I understand that you'll always have overtime, always have it. But I'm also thinking about when, which I hope you're taking into account, the number of officers that we do have, how many are supposed to be on for each
Well, that's what the
period
chief does. The chief takes that into consideration.
Let me finish. The number of officers that you do have on each time slot, and vacations, training, education, etc., sick days, whatever it may be. I still feel that we are going to be up in a very high category for overtime again without having that officer.
Charlie, do you see anything wrong with our rotations now as they stand?
No, and I haven't had that much of a discussion. I've been here 2 months, but I haven't had that much discussion with the chiefs as far as, the scheduling. But you're kind of walking a fine line on what we can tell the chief to do and not do. Technically, he reports to the county prosecutor, the head prosecutor. So as far as, and I've had a conversation with Christina about the police expenditures and budgets, and there's just as John said, there's nowhere to get more money. It's just not there unless we take it from somewhere else. I mean, when I look through this budget and I look at, especially if you go down to utility expenses, you look at last year and what we're proposing, I mean, even that's a really, really fine line, in my opinion. So I don't know where you can get any more out of this. You just can't. I know that police budget is tight, but you got to have a target, and we do the best we can do. But unless somebody can give me an idea of what else we can cut to increase it, because I don't see anything.
Well, except for the police department, I think we're going to have to put a freeze on any overtime, except for snow plowing that's in the town, and start to put some freezes on as far as any increases in anything. People always coming before us, and it seems that in last year, things were just given out without real discussions up here.
Let's have
So I just
an
wanna make
example.
sure
Let's
that-
have an example of what you're talking about.
I'll give you a perfect example when I'm talking about an increase that was given last year that was brought to us as a resolution the last minute, which we had no discussion on at all.
A pay increase?
Yes.
Yeah, it hardly ticked the budget.
Yes.
I wouldn't use that as a very good example.
Well, no, it isn't.
If we bought a dump truck without your permission, then that would be a good example.
And it was not an arbitrary increase. There was an increase in duties for that individual. And don't say there wasn't discussion. That's when you get to discussion at the committee level.
No, see, that's, and Rob...
Maybe you're talking about something else. Maybe you're talking in circles, Joanne, but...
I'm not talking, I gave you a specific example. I'm not talking in circles.
Tell me the specific example.
Maybe specific, but it's a poor example.
If you keep quiet for one moment, Walter, okay? Rob, you recall in the past, anytime we ever did anything, we had what we called work sessions. We discussed things. We brought people in when we were going to make hiring of
Right.
different positions. We never, ever went and just threw something in front of everybody and say, here it is, vote on it. You know that, Rob. You've been here long enough.
The meeting, you can discuss that at the meeting. We could have discussed it right there. We had to pass it. So it was either pass it, discuss it, shoot it down.
It could have been brought up for discussion before that. Also, any hiring of any professionals, and I'm going to bring that up again. One of my questions is, Christine, maybe you can answer this for me. Let me find that question here. What, put my wrong glasses on here so I can read. Okay. And it had to do with the professionals. What was the base for the legal professional in 2021, and what is the base for the legal professional in 22? The base, not any overtime, any additional work. I just want to know the
I think it's
base.
about 55, right?
It's 54 something
54.
now, but I think it was in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken,
The
last
legal
year.
budget has not changed. My understanding was the new attorney is comparable to what the old one was, and we always add a little extra because he works off of retainer, but we add in for COA, we add in for foreclosed property, any litigation. So-
Right, that's why I'm asking what the base is, what the base for the legal in 2021 was, and what the base for the legal in 2022 was, without any additional.
The base, I budgeted the same, $57,500.
That was the base, I don't believe that was the base rate for
The base rate, I don't have that available. The base rate, you're saying what the contract was?
Yes,
I don't
so
have
if you
that.
can let me know what that was? Okay.
I can tell you it's 42 this year.
What is it, 40?
42.
42 this year?
What's the point you're trying to make?
All right, let me go on to my next question. With the municipal court, Christine, I noticed that we still had 65, I think, in there, in the budget for
Correct.
municipal court. Is that going to, you think that's sufficient, that amount, based on the assistant prosecutor going? Are we going to possibly get a larger?
It's possible that
Increase in it?
amount, still with a reduction, we net our ticket revenue with that amount. Based on our limitations with the budget, it's not a good answer, it's the best we could put in there. We would like this year to be Last year was a lot of catch-up from switching the courts over. I think a lot of cases were possibly dismissed or just resolved to get it pushed through. We actually hope for a better ticket revenue this year, so that is why, truthful, it was left the same. It's the best we can do with the budget constraints, but we are hoping to have a better ticket revenue to offset the expenses.
Okay. Based on what, I don't know, Charlie, I think you mentioned this about the utility accounts, the propane account seems really low, I'm really worried
That
about
actually,
that
this
account.
was done prior. I am very
Because I
concerned.
know how much it's gone up already.
Correct. Like I said, this was done, the numbers were given prior to our recent week or two increase. I was going to reach out to Eric and possibly meet with him, and like I said, unfortunately, we are tied by that number at the top of the page, $2,237. That is our wiggle room with the expenditures. So believe me, that is on my notes, that is on my headlines of what the gas prices are, what the oil was. I was going to meet with Eric and see what we can do with possibly some of the buildings. I know, unfortunately, Walnut Valley Firehouse is a huge oil drain. So I was gonna...
Walnut Valley Firehouse?
Yes. It's a very large oil drain. Luckily, we are coming to the end of the winter season. We do expect to warm up, but I was going to reach out to Eric and have a discussion about that with the vehicles and the gas. And
Outside of generators, what are we using propane for? Heat
this
in
building.
this building?
This building's all propane.
The firehouse uptown, and also the public works department, and the water company as well.
That was a great idea, wasn't it? Heat this building with propane.
I'm pretty sure it had something to do with not having underground storage tanks.
on a good note, the heat's been broken in the building, so we've saved a little.
Good. Wear extra layers. Let's keep that bill down.
But we're using electrical ones to keep us warm. Sorry.
Have you received any information from the state of New Jersey with the new lead paint requirements? One of the provisions that's coming out is that the municipalities will be responsible to check lead paint in all of rental units. And so my concern is, does that mean it's going to fall on us to hire somebody to do that? Or is it going to fall on the DCA? Did you hear anything at all about that?
I actually, no, I have not heard anything, but just going off the limb, Blairstown does not recognize rental units. So I could come up with a good argument, since our DCA, we do not realize rental units, we do not acknowledge them. I don't see how we would be responsible, because we don't charge. In other municipalities, there's a rental contract. You would have to have the fire inspection, which all goes through the state. So I would think it would be the fall on the DCA, not the municipality, because we don't have a local fire inspector. We don't have any rental ordinances or bylaws or anything.
John, did you hear anything on this at all?
Nothing, this is the first I'm hearing of it, so.
Okay, well, maybe I'll look into it a little
Got a
bit more
note
too.
there.
I'll ask the attorney for our association. Let me see. All right, the senior citizens, I noticed that you put $2,500 in there. For the last 2 years, they have had nothing, absolutely nothing. And I really feel...
I didn't want to keep looking for them. You could take
I know, we increased your public celebrations and things, but the senior citizens for 2 years, nothing. They used to have a Christmas party, and we used to be able to fund at least one or two.
We've been in a pandemic for 2 years, though. They couldn't do anything.
Right, no, I understand that, and that's the thing, they didn't get anything, and this year we're cutting them back in half, which may or may not even provide for one trip for
No,
them.
last year we got
$2,500.
Correct.
Yeah, but I don't even think they used it last year, because they didn't use it last year, and the year before that, they didn't use it.
Correct.
So, but to cut it back, this year, to have at least one or two trips for them, I don't know if $2,500 is even enough, is it? Or to have the celebration that they like to have. I feel like, we've put more into the other celebrations.
What I could do is offer an offset to leave it at the 25, because we're also through March, and if there's no activity, if something comes up, we I can come to the committee and possibly fund it through the Recreation Trust Fund.
Okay.
Because that would
Okay.
be legitimate if something comes up. I don't know how active.
Right, do they even have anything planned yet this year?
No, not yet, but I was
That's what I'm
asked.
saying.
Yeah, I mean,
I
yeah.
don't think to put another hardship on another budget line. If for some reason something comes up, I think they can appeal to the township committee, and I always do have the Recreation.
All right,
Trust
that's a
for
good
that.
alternative. That sounds really good. All right, the shared services for the town. I want to get this straight again. We have several that are on shared services with the town. The way I understand this to be are all the salaries, even with the shared services, in our budget?
No.
Okay. So the part of shared services with the other towns are not included in our budget, because I don't see it on the revenue side.
Correct.
So that's,
No.
okay. All right.
So
well,
it works the
that's-
same as the court. The individual is paid out, the budget line is appropriation credited, the 25% of the shared service that the municipality keeps goes into MRNA.
Okay, so that is totally separate. That's
Correct.
All right, that's what I thought it was. Let me see. Oh, the miscellaneous category on the land use board, that went up a lot, and I don't know, what would that be for on the land use
Actually,
board?
the land use board, it didn't go up. This budget, when you see it, well, it's from the original. So when you're looking at the 2021 adopted budget, there's also the word modified. That is with before transfers. So last year, the land use board had money I transferred out at the November, December, I transferred out. So to give them what we transferred out, they,
Well, we expended in 2021, 2,100, let's say. We had budgeted 5,000, we spent it 21, and this year we've appropriated 7,500.
correct, but just bear with me 2 seconds, let me get to the page.
Do you know what it's for?
Last year, land use board, we had salaries. Land use board, the original adopted budget was $12,500. We transferred out to other line items, $7,500. So the final budget was $5,000. So they didn't expend, also due to COVID in their cases, they did not expend as much. And I do believe we increased their budget because there was the conversation of master plan expenses. Walter, if you could help me out or join on the land use board. Their budget always lingered around 8,000, 9,000. We did increase it for the 2021 budget because I believe it was the master plan expense.
Is this for new ordinance books or for maps and things like that?
No, there was going to be a review of the master plan.
Yes.
We did a cursory review of the master plan, but there was nothing, we didn't do anything with it.
Major.
That's why we were able to pull the money back out.
What is the total cost for your master plan review? Do you have any idea?
I don't think it wasn't,
Insignificant or?
I don't even know.
Well, the only
I
thing
don't
that
know.
was expended last year was 2,100.
Right, but is there a bigger piece of it that's going to happen this year? Is that why?
Not anticipated.
Because you could always do that as a special emergency if you had to. Pull it out of the budget now.
Well, the land use board hasn't discussed this at their, we didn't discuss the budget in the last two meetings. I don't know if that's on the agenda for this month. We're a little, I don't know why we would be behind on that. Maybe we I'm not recalling if we discussed the budget requests for the land use board. Do you know that we got one from the? I don't think we. I don't think we discussed it yet. I think it was basically a status quo, same as last year kind of thing.
So that's why, so it's really, Joanne, it's not they're getting more, they're actually just, they're going back to what they originally was adopted last year before the transfers out. So like I said, last year, land use board, the adopted budget was $12,500. We transferred out 75, that's what brought it down to the 5,000. And this year's budget was the 7,500, that's what they're usually requesting, usually allotted every year.
Okay. Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's true.
Even though they only used, all right, 2,000
Some years
last
land
year,
use board,
2,100 last
land
year.
use board is, it's driven on what comes before the board and how much their legal fees. Some of the attorney fees are very specific to certain applicants, but there are professional fees, and the more that comes before the board, the more general fees that are brought for it.
All right. How much, do you know what the contribution to PERS and PFRS went up this year?
That is
You know?
actually your, I can figure that out. The number that's in the budget is the actual bill.
amount?
Correct. So, oh my goodness, I need your glasses. So PFRS, which is the police and firemen's, last year it was 216,000 and change. This year it's 233 and change. So it's approximately 216 to 233. So that's about $18,000 increase in the PFRS. That's the police and
So
firemen's.
was it up to about 30% then? It was 28 something?
I don't know what the contribution is.
Yes.
I didn't check that.
28 or 29? 29%.
And the PERS did have, the public employees retirement did increase from 87,000 up to 111.
That's a
That
big
is
increase.
like about a $24,000 increase. Once again, these are set by the state.
Right.
I can look in to see if I can, my last check, they were still showing, I want to say 20.
18?
Yeah, 2018,
20?
2019. I'll check in to see if they have.
Okay, yeah, it's curious. I'd just like to know, based on some other things.
Yeah.
And let me just see something. Increase budget worksheet, our balance, our fund balance.
Our fund balance, at the
2,000.
unaudited fund balance at the end of 2021 was $573,966.99. It is a decrease of $12,817.91 from the prior year.
Okay.
Where we basically fell short this year was our interest on investments
Right.
and vacant and abandoned properties.
And I noticed we had to increase, because of the taxes, we had to increase the reserve for uncollected. So that went up. That went up considerably.
That number floats. We do like to see it going up. If your fund balance is going down, that number should be going up because they work in opposite directions.
Right, however,
If you start
it's not-
reducing the rut, then you're going to start reducing your fund balance as
Well, the
well.
reason why that number's going up also is because of uncollected taxes. Am I not correct?
Well, my concern is in a year of inflation like this, we're going to get back into days where we're going to start seeing some lower tax rates or lower collection percentages. So it might actually work out to your favor that it's up as high as it is. I mean, we could move it down a little bit, but it's still not going to affect your $2,000 inside the cap at this point. That's an outside the cap issue.
Okay, all right.
Our tax collection rate was 98.26.
That's still not bad.
Not
Still
bad
not
at all.
bad at all.
No.
Yeah. John, I have a question for you. The state allows seniors to freeze taxes. So we're looking at a possibility of a 16-cent increase in our taxes this year. Based on, is that a real number? And I'm asking that question because based on the freeze of taxes, somebody has to make up that money. And that's only for municipal, where that freeze comes in. So if we're putting on another 16 cents, let's say, tax increase, what is the real amount that we are looking at for the Blairstown residents because of the tax freeze?
Right.
That's number one. Number two is I noticed that our assessments went down again. It went to 702 based on what I'm seeing in here. It went from 712 maybe to 702. So we're getting...
I got it down 233,000, 707.3
Right.
to 707.0.
Right, so that means that we're making up a little bit
Yep.
more in that regard too. So what I'm trying to figure out is what the real effect is of the tax.
Okay, so we
on
don't
individuals.
typically get involved in the senior freeze because that takes place outside of your municipality. I think that's more of a credit or a refund that they get from the state.
Correct.
Get
They
the
have to
money
pay
back,
the
the
full
state
amount.
submits the money back to us?
Yeah,
No,
to them.
the
To them.
resident.
To
The
them.
resident pays the full
Okay.
taxes. The
Okay.
state reimburses the resident.
Okay.
So the state, we're essentially paying it on another level, but the municipality, my understanding is not, residents are not.
Not
making
affected.
up.
No.
Okay.
I've been doing that for years from my mom, and yeah, it is a rebate from the state at the end of the year.
Okay. But the tax assessment is a big difference. That does make a big difference to
That
us.
wasn't going in your favor this year. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I think that's the questions that I have at this time.
There's also a new program that I saw the other night. I was half awake when I saw the news. There's another type of rebate program that they're instituting in the state, the Anchor program, something along those lines.
Yeah, we just got an email on that the other day.
Okay.
It's going to make greater eligibility. They're raising the threshold for rebates, for tax rebates. So it's supposed to make it, cheaper to live in New Jersey.
Yeah, they're calling it a tax, what is it? They're a reduction in taxes, but it's really not. You're still charging the same taxes. You're
Right.
going to be able to get a rebate.
Yeah.
So I'd much rather see the state give more state aid to the municipalities, and you cut that initially through that. Speaking of state aid in the municipalities,
Frozen again.
Yeah, on, what is it? On Tuesday. You got a lot going on Tuesday. Governor's address is on Tuesday, and supposedly he's giving money back, more energy receipt tax to the town. There's supposed to be like a ramping up to get back to levels that they used to be at before they dropped them all and made it flat. So hopefully, we see an increase over the next 3 years or 3 to 5 years of that energy receipt tax money going back up, but we just don't know what it is yet or what portion might be in this year. We should know by March 9th, which is Wednesday, and we'll have an idea of what we're going to put in the budget this year for that.
So it's possible that $2.9 million or what $2.9 million that we've been stagnant, because cost of living went up 3.5%.
Yep.
So we're really getting hurt in regards to that.
I'd love to see it come out as a percentage, because that would help you out the most.
Exactly.
Because you're getting it's a percentage on a big number.
Right.
So that's why I'm not overly concerned. Like, there's that interest payment on debt isn't in here yet, but that still needs to be factored in. The reduction of your refunding needs to be factored in. We can move a little money back out of rut, to not go down below last year's threats. We do have some moving parts and the ability to make that up, but we're going to see where that comes in at. Hopefully it's good.
All right.
And I would ask that we have a meeting Wednesday night, so things are happening Tuesday, Wednesday. If you guys can get a really good handle on what's happening at the state level and how it affects our budget for us for Wednesday night, just for discussion, that'd be great. Thank you.
Do my best.
Christine, there's one page on what you gave us on here that I'm not sure what it pertains to. It's $64,000. It's page, is this police? That's police. Police budget, okay.
Oh, that was just the,
That's at the bottom.
right, that is just the proposed, I was asked this year just to have the police and the DPW submit what their proposed budgets, what they would request.
Okay. Okay.
All right, once again, I want to thank Joanne for being as detail-oriented as she usually is, and it's nice to see you take the deep dive into the budget that you do. Did you have any questions from Committeewoman Waldron? She said she had passed.
It was the police, basically
Okay.
the police, yeah,
Okay.
with the information that we had received, and we both, we've heard a lot over the years and everything, so we are really concerned, and if the way things have been going in town with, being first responders and stuff, that's critical, in my opinion. And that's the other question. Let's just bring that up a second, too. We know that as far as the ambulance is concerned, what will happen if they can't get the coverage? Will we have to secure with another area to cover us? Will that cost us? Charlie, do you know anything on this?
Worst case scenario, if you lost your Blairstown Ambulance Corps, we would have to either go out to St. Luke's, one of the other paid facilities, they'll come in. They don't usually charge the town anything.
Okay.
They do what they call hard billing.
Right.
So their money comes from the residents. The only thing we would probably have to supply them with is a place to house their truck.
Right.
But
And that would probably work out, because if the ambulance corps was defunct,
right.
Well, not even if they're
they-
defunct, but if they don't have enough coverage or they can't get to it.
well, they don't have enough coverage. They don't as it is.
The fire department has been stepping up, though, and they are they're trying to certify as many as they can to help out with those first response situations. But hopefully we can build that back up. Hopefully, I think COVID really put a dent in volunteerism as a whole in anything, and I think people, and a lot of people, I think, quite frankly, were just afraid to do it, to be near people. You know, they didn't want to be those first responders, and I think we're going to see a resurgence in it when all this passes.
I don't know, but it's just harder to find people to volunteer, you know, to give up their time.
With anything, with any organization.
Exactly, everything.
In the ambulance corps, it's quite a commitment. It's a lot of hours, a lot of training. That's one of the nice things about having when we eventually get our sign. You know,
Right.
you have to notify people. We need volunteers.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Orcutt, any questions?
No, I don't have anything. We've done it. We've gone through this budget many times. There's not a lot to work with, but our main thrust has been to make sure that we maintain the services that the residents need and do capital improvements that are going to help in the future. There have been a lot of things that have been cast aside because of, funding, and we just have to fix the roads. The roads, if they deteriorate to a certain point, then it's really becomes expensive. So Eric has done a great job in future planning for the town. I know he's here today, off camera, but we're planning for the future. We're making sure the roads are in a good rotation as far as being resurfaced, either overlay or oil and stone or other methods, and we're looking at other things like crack sealing on a more frequent basis, just to keep those roads to stretch out, years in between resurfacing. And it's a big expenditure, and it's in the capital side of the budget. And we're talking about some things today that are $1,000 one way or another. Well, resurfacing roads is a big deal, and it's very expensive, and that's the main reason for most of the bonding going forward is for road and capital improvements. So we're working real hard. The road department is working real hard. Nobody's talking about, Joanne brings up about bringing in more police department. We could certainly use more bodies in DPW also, but we just, we're holding the line and working with what we have. It's a tough deal. We're not going to put a freeze on overtime for a department that's understaffed. We're not doing that, at least in my opinion. Maybe if someone wants to make that motion, they can do it, but we can't do that.
No,
we don't have enough bodies as it is. And we're doing the best job we can with the money we have. And as we said, I'm coughing here. As we said before, moving forward, we're trying to do the right thing for the town as we're planning for the future. And this financial document that we do every year is there's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of detail in behind it, and we've done the right things for the town. If we can hold the taxes flat for the next 5 years after we do this increase, it's the best that we can do based on the situation we're in. We didn't have a municipal tax for many, many years. A lot of money was appropriated out of other sources, such as open space. We've stopped doing that to the extent that we can. And it clearly comes under the municipal tax that we have. At the end of the day, and I think for the meeting on the 9th, I think we all have to do our homework a little bit and look at the other towns in the surrounding area. And you're going to find that Blairstown is really on the lower end of the tax base for, I shouldn't say tax base, for the tax bill from any of the other towns in the county. We're not the lowest, but we're darn near the bottom of that. So, having said that, Mayor, I'll relinquish my time to you.
All right.
Rob, when you have a moment, I want to go over something again.
Sure, go ahead, Joanne.
If you recall, back 3 years ago when we first initiated a tax in the town, we did several sessions bringing the public out to make them aware so that there would be no major revolt come August, September. And I really think with this, there should be at least 2 meetings at schedule the high school and let all the people come in and let them know what's going on. Or you're going to have this room with people blasting in August and September when that new tax bill comes out. If communication, we're talking about communication again, if people are aware and know the reasons why, how much and why it's happening, There was no issue that year that we put the tax on at all. Not one person came out and complained about it. But if you go and everybody gets their new tax bill and they take a look at the way it goes up, because we're just talking about municipal. We're not even talking about what could happen at the high school. I'm going to go to the board meeting Monday night for the high school and find out what's going on there. And I'll know with the elementary school what they're looking at. County-wise, I have no clue yet. But when they get their tax bill come August, September, whenever the tax bills are mailed out, there will be a massive revolt, because there's going to be huge. It's going to be a huge increase. It really will be a very large increase. But if there's communication and people are aware, you can't say, we had several meetings, we asked you to come out, we're doing presentations, etc. The more information the people have up front, the less complaints there could be later on.
But to put things into perspective, even with the tax increase, what you pay in municipal tax in Blairstown will be lower than what you pay to your satellite provider for a lot of TV you don't watch.
I understand that, but
so, I mean,
don't care, Rob.
in the whole grand scheme of things, in order to keep a town running and to live in a town and want services from that town and hopefully get some new things like a park and things being brought up, in the whole grand scheme of things, we are still a very, very cheap place to live as far as municipal services. We can't help the school taxes. There's nothing we as a town can do about that. But as far as providing a beautiful town with safe roads and a police department, I don't think you're going to find better or cheaper in this county.
And what you're saying is 100% correct, but you've got to get it out to the people.
We will. And I was at one of those meetings, and even those meetings weren't very well attended. I think we need to find other ways to communicate. People don't want to come out, and especially now with COVID, look at how well attended this is today. It's we need more than 3 people to talk to, and we can do that electronically. We can certainly do that if we do want to have a meeting like that. If we have that electronic board up, we can get it out on that. There will be a meeting.
But Mayor, we are doing that.
Yeah,
all the meetings are
well, that's true, and that's
every
the
bit of this is
beauty
on
of this.
Seniors
YouTube.
aren't
We have a
on
Facebook. We have a Facebook presence.
Yeah.
I was just going to suggest,
And seniors are going to. Do you see seniors coming to our meetings in general?
No, they're not.
In deference.
That's why if you have them,
Not the youngsters back there. We're not talking about.
You mean the seniors can't look on YouTube? They don't look at YouTube?
Do what you want.
We're really trying to be as transparent as
You're
possible.
not.
The meeting, Joanne, the meetings you're
exception to
referring,
that, Joanne.
the meetings you're referring to, I think, I was running for office at the time, and we had about maybe
80 to 100 were there that day.
80 to
80 to 100 we counted.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I'd go that high.
Yes, 80 to 100.
Most of the people there were part of the committee or had some. I was there. If you're talking about the one I was there, there were not.
I know where you sat. There were a lot of people behind you.
There were not 100 people there. Anyway,
Okay.
So you know what, you deal with it when it comes in.
we very well will.
but again, I'm going to suggest, by having the meetings recorded and out there. As of this morning, I think when I left the house, the last meeting was only been up for 3 days maybe, and we still had 40-some views already. So it hasn't even been widely published that they're out there, and people are already starting to look. It's going to be interesting to see how many people watch the budget meeting, and I'm sure you're going to get quite a few views. To your point, tax bills come up. They can go back. The video's still going to be there. They can see where their money is spent, why we went this, as John eloquently put it, he explained it very well, why we're at where we are. So I don't know how else we can get the information out. It's there. Every minute of this meeting.
No problem being here, so.
Yeah, we didn't do this in the past, and this is a really good thing. So, and thank you, Charlie, for getting us rolling on that, procuring the equipment, and even everyone says the sound is awesome too, which is nice. People can actually hear us. So, anything else? pertaining to the budget today. Anyone have any? John, Christine, anything else to add?
It's the same as...
Christine's calculating, I just...
No calendar.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking at the calendar. If we proceed forward with the introduction and the adoption, obviously it would not be available for March 9th.
We don't have another March meeting this month.
Okay, so we're looking to introduce on April 13th and adopt on May 11th.
We'll be ahead of schedule.
I didn't know if you were asking or...
And maybe
Well,
you'll have your funding number by then, too. The state.
Well, we'll have it by Wednesday, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll introduce on the 13th and adopt on May 11th. And we'll also be introducing the COLA ordinance on the 13th then. That's just allowing us to go up to the 3.5.
Are we keeping open space the same amount of money, 2.5 cents?
2.5 cents.
We need to
That's
this
what I
year,
have.
correct.
And what about the water company, the other budgets?
The water we discussed, we actually had a good year with fund balance of the water is $116,000. A lot of appropriations were canceled back to it. The main focus this year on the water was more on a capital standpoint
Right.
with the second well, and we're waiting for the specs on the media. There will be discussions once the budget's introduced about potentially reviewing the water rate and see where we go from there. So the water company was happily very non-lackluster this year, which is good.
And you are not in a self-examination year, so
We're not, I think, I don't think
you're
we're
eligible.
wonderful.
So the state's going to do a review of your budget, and as long as we get it to them April 13th, we should have it turned around, but they sometimes get bogged back and bogged down. So there's a possibility that you may not be adopting on May 11th, but it's just an outside chance at this point.
Okay. All right.
Fair enough.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Christine. Thanks for everyone for coming here today. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you very much, folks.